So on the periodic table, we have metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. Each of these basic types of elements behave in different ways, which means we can observe their various chemical and physical properties that distinguish them from one another. It turns out that the various chemical properties that we see in elements are because of electrons. That is, the electrons are responsible for the chemical properties that we see in substances. So in this lab, we're going to examine some of the physical and chemical properties of several elements and compare what we see to what we've been told we should see in those elements. So make sure you have your interactive periodic table open, and our learning target for today is how can you identify an element as a metal, nonmetal, or metalloid? So the first two elements that we're going to be looking at are lithium and sodium. Now both of these are alkali metals in group 1 down here, which means all of the elements in this group have what's called one valence electron, which is the outermost electrons in their shell. They only have one of them. So these are very reactive. Some of the properties, the chemical properties that we see of lithium and sodium is that they are very, very reactive. And we're going to react them with just water and see what happens. Now, because lithium and sodium are so reactive, they have to be stored in special containers so that they will not suddenly react with any water in the atmosphere. They react very rapidly with water. We're going to take a look at that. Okay, so here's the lithium. This is the lithium metal. And you can look and see it's this kind of a gray metal. And this is just a simple little knife. It's very soft. You can cut easily through it. Okay. And when we cut through it, we can see what it looks like on the inside. So you can make initial observations of our lithium metal. And so then here we see our sodium metal, and we can compare that to what it looks like with the lithium metal there. And again, it is a soft metal. It's very easy to slice through that. And we can see again that it's this nice shiny metal on the inside there. Okay. And these are stored, because they're so reactive, lithium and sodium are both stored in oil. Okay, so now we're going to react both the lithium and the sodium with water. Here I have a bowl of water in here, and I'm going to just put in it just a couple of drops of what's called phenolphthalein. This is just an acid indicator. It'll turn pink when the reaction happens because there's an acid that's being produced, and so it's going to turn pink because of that. So here again, here's our lithium. And you can see where I sliced it. It's already starting to go darker because it reacts with the air a little bit. Okay, so it's very reactive metal. Here goes the lithium. So that's the lithium reaction right there. And so now we're going to take a look at the sodium reaction. So bring in my other bowl of water here, and we can compare those two reactions. The lithium is just above the sodium on the periodic table. Lithium is atomic number 3, sodium is atomic number 11. So lithium has 3 electrons, sodium has 11 electrons. So we should see that the sodium is a bit more reactive than the lithium. So here's the sodium before we put it in. You can take some initial observations of that metal, okay? And here goes the reaction of sodium in water. Okay, so next we're going to look at 8 different elements and compare the various properties that we see in those and see if we can figure out, the ones that we say are metals, do they behave like we're told metals should behave? Do the non-metals and all that? Can we figure out, are they metals, non-metals, or metalloids based on the properties that we see? Okay, so the first element that we have is aluminum. And you can make your initial observations from here, okay? You can see what it looks like. So make your initial observations of each of these as we go through them. So there's aluminum. Next we have carbon, okay? And you can see what carbon looks like through here, okay? So here's our carbon. Next is copper. Okay. Iron. Magnesium. Silicon, sulfur, and finally zinc. Okay, so for the next part, we're going to see if these substances conduct electricity. Okay, and so what I have here, this is a conductivity tester. And for each of these, I'll put the 2 probes onto the strip. Okay, and if it conducts electricity, these lights will light up. Okay, so we're going to check first. Here is aluminum. It would help if I turned it on. There we go, there's aluminum. Next is carbon. Okay, you can see, you can change your initial observations of these and add to them as we go through and look at each of these metal strips. So here's the carbon. Next is copper. Next is iron. Magnesium. silicon. For sulfur, there's not really a way to test it. Sulfur is not conductive and not magnetic. And finally, zinc. Okay, so our next part here is looking to see if each of these elements reacts with hydrochloric acid, or HCl. HCl is an acid, okay? So we're using what's called a 1 molar hydrochloric acid for this. And I've got each of these elements set up in a little test tube, and we're just going to put in some HCl and see if there's a reaction. So think back to, indications of chemical reactions and see if we get chemical reactions out of these. So here's aluminum. Next, here's carbon. And then copper. And then here's iron. Next is magnesium. Here is silicon. Next we have sulfur. And finally, here is zinc.